my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be acceptable to you, O Lord, for strength in our redeemer. For the first time in as long as I can remember, the last couple weeks I was not at church because I was sick. I developed COVID-19, and it was clear that I would miss at least 2 Sundays to quarantine and to get better before I came back. And as many of you remember, last summer in July, I was also out for several weeks because of a medical procedure. I don't think in my 20 years of serving in churches that I've had a year where I've missed several Sundays because of something other than vacation. So it's been a first, and as I've reflected on this experience, especially the experience of being sick and being away, I've come to the conclusion that it's a good thing not to be sick, but it's a good thing that it was so easy for me to be away, because it means that as the dean and as the clerical leader of the cathedral, I know that I can let go, that I don't need to be involved in everything, and that you don't need me to be involved in everything. There are others, lots of others at the cathedral who can do the important work of God, and not everything depends on your dean. You have capable clergy and lay leaders, and much of what they do is so much better when I'm not there at all. In part, I'm thinking about this because I'm planning for this year to be away for 4 months, which is 3 months of sabbatical and 1 month of vacation, and in May, June, July, and August. And up to now, perhaps I would not have known, at least in the bottom of my heart, that I can let go and that all will be well without me, but I have no doubt about that now. You don't need me. Of course, we need each other in the big picture. We need each other. And I realize that the role of the dean in the life of a cathedral is a pretty important role for the operation. But much of my work in the last couple of years has really been trying to make sure that I'm not at the center of everything, that there are as many people as possible who are involved in all that we do, from preaching to pastoral care to administration to caring for members to working on the buildings and grounds. There are very few ministries that fall just upon me, and there are very few ministries at the cathedral that really fall on 1 or 2 people. We are blessed, with a few exceptions, we are blessed that most of our ministries have teams or groups or committees that support them. And we are blessed to have all of you. So today, for my address for the annual meeting and for this sermon, I thank you for being the ministers of Christ Church Cathedral. In particular, I want to thank our wardens, Craig Cox, who's here, and Donna Barton, these amazing wardens that God has given us, and Judith McMunn, who is the shadow warden. And if you don't know what that is, you have to read the reports in the annual meeting to find out more about that. I thank so much the clergy who are part of our team: Linda Taupier, Joel Martinez, Jerry True, and Barbara Thrall. If you look at the reports of the annual meeting, you'll see how involved this leadership of clergy and wardens has been in so many ministries in the last year and continue to be involved in this year. And we are blessed. We are blessed to have you all, so thank you. We're blessed to have an incredible staff, including Amanda Paredes. If you haven't met Amanda, who works in the office, do yourself a favor and just call her and say hi. She's such a nice, kind, generous person. We are blessed to have Edwin Garriga, our sexton, and Sergio Dorsini and Todd Beckham, our incredible musicians. And we want to thank God for the leaders of the executive committee for this past year, including our clerk, Denise McCarthy. Thank you. Mike Stevens, our treasurer. Thank you. Mark Betcher. Thank you. Ed Farrell, Kayla Torres, Francita Sage Thorington, Nil Savelis, Mark Giddings, Ruth Bradley, and Gladys Sekere. Thank you all. You know, someday people will look back at this time, regardless of all the changes and the challenges we face because of COVID-19, they will look back at this time and they will say, those were good days. Despite COVID, we were active, we held together, we got important things done, and we made a difference. Church should not revolve just around your priest. In many congregations it does, in part because sometimes the priest is kind of controlling. I have that tendency, and they want to do everything. Sometimes in a congregation, the community is going through transitions, and so you really need the priest's work to make sure that things are heading in a good direction. And sometimes you have congregations who look to the priest to do everything, like the Father knows best model of the old days. But theologically and biblically and according to Christian tradition, church is about all of us leading and serving and using the gifts that we have been given. In the epistle today to the community in Corinth, St. Paul writes that, and this is perfect for our Sunday annual meeting, he reminds us that we are all members of the body of Christ, and each of us individually is a member, and that we've been given gifts. And why have we been given gifts? To be used for the body, for the poor, for the hungry, for those who are hurting, for those who are separate, for the world outside, to glorify God and so that God can be known. In the Message translation of 1 Corinthians 12, the gospel says this, and this is such a great quote: each person is given something to do that shows who God is. I love the idea that what we've been given inside of us has been given to us by God to show who God is. Which means that when we sing in the choir, we're showing who God is. When we're helping an Afghan refugee family, we're showing who God is. When we knit prayer shawls, when we lead a Bible study, when we serve on the executive committee, when we arrange flowers, when we are ushers and camera people, what we're really doing is showing who God is. Everything you do for the body, for the good, for the world, and for another human being or for your own soul is done to demonstrate and point toward and make real the amazing God who has given us this life. If you open the reports to the annual meeting, and there are copies, we made copies, they're on the table out there. If you open the reports, you will see that the reports of Christ Church Cathedral are filled with examples of people showing us who God is in these ministries. If you open the newspaper, or if you open the doors, or if you open the window and you look outside, it's often so confusing to try and figure out who God is. What we see out there, what I see out there is a God preached who is a God of judgment and anger. What I often see out there is a God preached who is a God that is meant to build certain people up and reinforce their egos. And what I see God preached is a God who is supporting the powers and principalities of the world. But where do we find the God of love? Where do we see the God of peace? Where do we encounter the God of hope, if not at church? That God is here. It's in you and it's in what you do. That God is in those whom we serve. That God is in the interactions we have with each other. That God is in the praise we offer and in the mystery of bringing Jesus to this altar every single Sunday, that God is here so clearly, and you help to make that happen. We are a strong and healthy church, and we will overcome the struggles of the pandemic year, even though we have no clue about what's coming week to week. We are blessed to report that so much is going right at Christ Church Cathedral, including a successful pledge drive, and thank you to Roland Holstead and Betsy Torres and Kent Tarrant for helping with that. The beginning of what's going to be an amazing capital campaign, and thank you to Angelica Mayin and Ed Farrell, and the outreach ministries, working with the Afghan community, working with Big Blue Drop-In Center, and thank you for Linda, and thank you very much for Judith and Judy, and thank you for Barbara for helping with these. So much is going right. We're getting new members at the cathedral. But what have we lost? What has the community of the church lost? Well, we've lost people. We've lost people's participation as they have not been able to locate and connect with us on Zoom or on Facebook. We've lost some of the closeness and bonding that we've had in the past. And I personally can think of, I don't know how many people who I used to see and hug and talk with on a regular basis every single Sunday who I haven't seen in such a long time, and that hurts us. Part of what I like to do at the annual meetings, announce some initiatives. So here are a couple of initiatives. One is that Canon Joel Martinez and I This year, I'm working on a plan to engage people from the cathedral where we dedicate one day a week to calling and visiting and texting and emailing people. And you're invited to participate if you want to be part of that. Just let me know. Let me know if you want to be part of this ministry of inReach. And it's not that we haven't been calling and visiting and contacting people. It's just that it seems that the need is so great now, entering this third year of the pandemic. Is that right? The third year of the pandemic, that we need to really get the community out there. We need to be in touch with people. And along those same lines, another initiative we have for this year is to increase our public prayer. Last year we had several events, including a prayer service right here in the park, at the police station, City Hall, and down the street at Bay State Medical Center. We prayed with anyone who showed up. And it's an amazing way in public praying to make God real, and especially for people who have lost their faith, and especially for people who are wondering about their faith, and especially for people who've never known God or have no clue who Jesus Christ is. And then one final thing I really want to share this year, something that we've also talked about in the past. My hope is that each of us would be able to articulate for ourselves the answer to these questions. Who is God for me? Who is Jesus Christ for me? How am I knowing them in my life, and how am I helping to make them known? It would be wonderful if everyone at the cathedral were able to say for themselves who God is and who Jesus is for themselves. It makes being a Christian so much more powerful when we are able to locate the divinity of Christ within our own life, within our own story, within our faith story. You know, as you're being ordained, going through the ordination process, you tell your faith story again and again and again. I am blessed to be able to share my faith story, but do you know your faith story? Can you identify who God is and who Jesus is? Why do you keep coming back to church? Why are you not at home on a cold Sunday morning? Why do you participate in these ministries? I think it would be amazing for each of us to be like Jesus. You know, today he comes up before the community and he's given the scroll of the prophet Isaiah, which he opens and he reads to the community. And as he begins to read, it's clear that Jesus is reading to us his purpose. He's reading to us his mission, his calling, the way that God has chosen him to make God real through bringing life to the poor and eyesight to the blind and release to the captives. So if you were to do the same thing, if you were to come up here and begin the sentence says, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me because God has anointed me to do what? How would you finish that sentence? The Spirit of the Lord is upon me because God has anointed me to do what? I would love it if Christ Church Cathedral can help you finish that sentence. As a rule, I generally don't say that we need people for ministries. I don't think it's helpful to say that we need you for a specific ministry, but I do think it's very helpful to say that you need a ministry, that I need a ministry, that we need ministries. We need places where we can give our gifts. As I think about the last 2 weeks when I wasn't at church, and I think about the 4 months when I'm not going to be at church for a while, the thing that keeps coming up with me again and again is how much I love church and how much I need church. Because we need these places where we can go, large or small, to share the gifts that we have been given. Our souls need to participate in some work of God, either huge or teeny, either here or elsewhere. Our souls have gifts that need to be shared. We have amazing gifts. Our gifts ache to be let out. They're crying to be given away, and the world so desperately needs them. And Christ Church Cathedral is here to help. So I pray that you will stay tuned as our plans develop. And one other thing, I would love it if we can think about discerning. That word discerning is such a great word because it has to do with listening and being open to something. So this year, as opportunities come up, as we hear every Sunday scriptures, as we sing, as we are motivated, I wonder if you could discern and say, well, what is God calling me to do, and how can I share my gifts? How can I make God real, either here or somewhere else? How can I discern truly what is the calling in my heart that Jesus has placed there? I'm excited about this year. I'm excited about Christ Church Cathedral. And I'm excited that every time I get a chance to talk to one of you guys that you're here. It's pretty amazing if you think about what we do. May God bless you all. May God bless Christ Church Cathedral. Amen.